What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with another episode of Dynasty Decisions. As you guys know, this is where we take your submissions. So if you guys want to be a part of future episodes, you can reach out to us on Discord, on Twitter, or become a Patreon to get your responses prioritized. This is where you send us your teams. We talk about where you can improve some of the questions that you have for us, or you can just send us general questions if you just want to know, hey, I have the 102, who should I pick, etc. If you just have general macro-based questions, we always appreciate those. But if you guys do enjoy this video at any point, hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Danny, how you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, I'm not going to go on that whole spiel about how this is one of our favorite series. All I'm going to say is, damn, can the NFL draft come soon enough now that the freaking Super Bowl is gone? Because again, if you guys watch that Super Bowl, what an exciting game. But all that reminds me is there's so much football to look forward to. There's so much of an offseason to look forward to. We all know mid-March free agency. We all know the draft coming up. Well, let's see how these deals and let's see how these situations for your dynasty rosters ends up maturing throughout the offseason, because guess what? It's going to be a lot of jam-packed action.
Yeah, and we're going to be dropping these videos on Sundays now because we have no actual football to watch on Sundays. We figure we might as well give you some Dynasty Decisions talk on Sundays because, you know, it's still football. So we're going to hit the intro and then we're going to get right into this. Okay, so our first submission comes from the two of us because right before we decided to record this, we were talking about potential trades of me in another league because I'm trying to offload Dalvin Cook. And Danny mentioned something about trading J.K. Dobbins in our Listener Dynasty League. And I actually traded Danny J.K. Dobbins midway through the season. I traded Danny J.K. Dobbins and Rashad Bateman for Jerry Jeudy and Leonard Fournette because I was trying to win. I ended up losing in the championship. And I ended up flipping Jeudy for Justin Fields along with some other pieces in that deal. So, you know, moral of the story, I wanted J.K. Dobbins back because I drafted J.K. Dobbins very highly, and I believe very highly in J.K. Dobbins. So the trade that we made, I traded away my 2023 first. And again, I am currently contending, so it's expected to be mid to late. It's not going to be early, that's for sure. And Chase Claypool in exchange for J.K. Dobbins and the 204. So we're going to break down our own trade, which is something we haven't really done before. From my perspective, I think it makes sense for both of our teams. You're obviously a rebuilding team. You collect the 2023 first, which is just another, you know, liquid asset to add to your arsenal of already very liquid currency. Chase Claypool to me is the deciding factor of this trade because I think of the pieces in this trade, obviously him in the 204 could end up being closer in value. I would definitely prefer Chase Claypool as of now. But I think Chase Claypool lost a bit of value this season.
Yeah, and again, like if I were to equate Chase Claypool to value, it would definitely be a little bit above the 204. You're talking about prospect value, like maybe Claypool versus like a David Bell. I'd probably personally rather Jameson Williams to him straight up. So that would probably be the range, like back end first, early second. So I mean, we're not too far off there in terms of discrepancy. And in terms of that 204, I wanted to give you a later pick. I just genuinely didn't have another later second. So, I mean, I'm fine with losing overall win now type of value. If that's the case, obviously, you're banking on J.K. Dobbins being, you know, top 12 running back coming back and one of the best offenses in the league. For me, shedding myself of RB points, getting another first. This is my fourth to 2023 first, and taking a stab at a young receiver that, quite frankly, did not mesh well with what Ben Roethlisberger was doing last year. And we saw the upside of a Chase Claypool 2 years ago. I feel like he gets a lot of stigma on him because, you know, his TikToks and his extracurriculars. But man, you talk about a 6'4" wide receiver that can run near 4.3. I mean, I'll take the chance, especially if they have, you know, a Malik Willis or any type of quarterback upgrade, Matt Corral, somebody, because we all know at this point that Pittsburgh's going to get a quarterback. It just kind of depends on who at this point.
Right. And I think the nice thing for me is while the 204 isn't going to net me probably as good of a prospect in what we now know about Chase Claypool, I could still get, you know, if Christian Watson gets good draft capital or, you know, Sky Moore, somebody like that is probably what I'm looking at because unfortunately for me, you pick 201, 202, and 203. So I highly doubt I'm going to get, you know, Tyler Algier, who I'm super high on, David Bell, who I'm super high on, because I know you're going to pick them ahead of me. So I'm probably looking at the next tier down. George Pickens maybe falls to that 204 if he doesn't get, you know, early second round draft capital or something like that. So that's the rationale behind the trade. Again, in my running back core, I now have, you know, a solid win now type of core: Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins, Damian Harris, Leonard Fournette. bunch of guys there. I still have Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, Mark Andrews is my tight end, Justin Fields, Ryan Tannehill is my top 2 quarterbacks. So I'm in a pretty decent position to go try and win. Again, came in second last year, lost to Garrett in the finals, and then obviously you're just loaded with assets going forward.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. I'm loading up on my quarterbacks and wide receivers for the most part. Like, I love Claypool. I think he's like my wide receiver 6 at this point because, again, this is a team with, Jamar Chase, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, Amon St. Brown. Like, this is just a loaded team that I'm dealing with in terms of liquid assets. And again, as you mentioned, I simply just don't really need running back production right now. And if that's going to be the cost for me to move off of RB points to ultimately tank my pick, because as we all know, if you have producing running backs, that's going to inherently increase the value of your own pick. I made a similar deal just a couple months ago with Javonte Williams, so I'm fine with ridding my running back points and maybe losing in the short term while still getting really good value in the long term.
Right. And you want that pick to be as high as possible because you're trying to actually get your running backs in the 2023 class. And if you have a couple picks in those top, 5 overall, and you can secure Bijan and Gibbs as your top 2 running backs, then you're probably going to be looking to do something like that. So moving off of our trade, let's get into your actual submissions. If you guys want to comment who won the trade down below, go ahead. We're going to start with Ollie the Bum or Tim, a Patreon member. And again, if you guys want your questions prioritized, if you want to be the first guys that we talk about on these videos, you could become a Patreon, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Link is in the description for that. One of many benefits that you'll get for becoming a Patreon. But we're going to start with Tim's team. He has listed here. It's a 1 quarterback league. He's got Justin Herbert, pretty much all you need. And then his running backs, Javonte, Saquon, Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins, big loaded running back core there, Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, Renfro, etc. Travis Kelce, Noah Fant at tight end. Also has 2 first rounders this year, 101 and 107 with a number of other picks. And then does not have his first rounder in 2023, which is, obviously he's probably made some moves to go acquire some of these players. But his first question is, should he use his picks, his 101 and his 107, probably most notably, or should he trade them for other pieces?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this team right here. I mean, you clearly tell from the makeup of this team, especially on 1 quarterback. I mean, this is a win now type of team with guys like Kelce, Hopkins, Kupp, Evans, Barkley. Like, you're in a situation to win now. I wouldn't be opposed to trying to see what type of value you can float for that 101. Like, if somebody's willing to give you an abundance of value for that pick, go win your championship. Because again, you go 4 deep at running back. I don't even know how you got this type of pick capital with that team. But the only real question mark I might have is your overall health and consistency at the wide receivers. Because again, after those top 3, Renfro's been he's been good this past year, but we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like with a fully healthy Darren Waller. Adam Thielen, obviously an aging, injured wide receiver recently, and Robert Woods is coming off a torn ACL. So what I would look to do is maybe see if you can buy low on a DJ Moore, buy low on a Deontay Johnson, fill out this team, give you another depth wide receiver to ultimately complement what you got going on. Because again, even if you don't trade the pick, or if you do, after this draft, you're going to be looking at probably a top 2 or top 3 overall team at worst in your league.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And I think you're in a great position too, because your biggest need, in my opinion, is wide receiver, and especially young wide receivers. So if you need to, just spend the 101 on Drake London, Treylon Burks, whatever wide receiver you think. It's a 1 quarterback too, which is perfect. So you don't have to worry about, the quarterback position and where they end up going in the draft. As it currently stands, my 101 is Drake London. So that's probably who I would go with at 101. But if you prefer Treylon Burks, by all means, go with him. And that 107, you're probably still going to get a half decent wide receiver there. If you wanted to add, David Bell, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, somebody like that at that 107, you could really fill out this wide receiver core naturally through the draft. And then even at that 207, if you want to add another, young tight end to your core, grab like a Trey McBride or something like that, or Jalen Weidermeyer, you could probably do something like that. So in my opinion, you're just in a position to just let your draft picks fill your needs for you, which is not a position that you usually see a whole lot, but your needs line up well with the strength of this draft and the value that those picks are going to be at. So I think you're in a great position. He also says any contending moves that you'd make. Again, the only move that I'm contemplating making is that 101, seeing what it's worth, seeing if you can downgrade the 101 to the 104 and pick up maybe a contending wide receiver. Somebody is willing to give you Calvin Ridley and the 104 for the 101 or something like that. Maybe they're really, really high on Treylon Burks or something. You could always pull a move off like that. if it's possible. But as it currently stands, I don't think you need to rush anything. I think at worst case scenario, you just take Burks, London, or whoever at 101 and fill out your wide receiver core that way.
Let's get into Kilgi. I'll let you take it away with this team.
Yeah, so Kilgi sends his team here. You guys can see it there. He traded a bunch of draft picks for DeAndre Hopkins and Zach Wilson, and he ended up winning the championship, even despite trading for those two players who probably didn't help him win his championship this year. But he's really draft poor for the next 2 years. He doesn't have his first or second rounders in 2022 or 2023. He's got a bunch of third and fourth and fifth round picks. And even, again, you see his team. He has Josh Allen, Tua, Zach Wilson in a super flex format. He has Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, most notably at running back, Devontae Adams, Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks at wide receiver. At tight end, he has Darren Waller on IR, obviously, so he was a guy that wasn't really contributing for him. And then at running back, wide receiver, he still has DeAndre Hopkins and Gus Edwards, Raheem Mostert on IR as well. So looking at his team, does he have any kind of moves that stand out to you? To me, the only ones that stand out is just Joe Mixon, right? Like, where anybody who has Joe Mixon on their roster, we're going to constantly advocate to see what he's worth on the open market, because most casual players, most redraft only players are going to value Joe Mixon a lot higher than he should be, given his age, given the touch workload that he's seen over the course of his career. And if you can downgrade maybe short-term production for the first, 8 weeks of next year and get 4 to 5 years younger, or 2 to 3 years younger even, at the running back position, that is always something I'm looking to do. So if you can take Joe Mixon and turn him into, Joe Mixon plus something for DeAndre Swift, or you can just go Joe Mixon to Antonio Gibson or Cam Akers or somebody like that. That's the major move that stands out to me. The other major moves that stand out to me is at wide receiver, because you don't really have anybody that's going to give you consistent production outside of Devontae Adams. And given the state of your team and the cost of acquisition for young wide receivers, I'm probably looking to acquire a win now type of wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a Keenan Allen and a pick for Mixon, I wouldn't be opposed to that. And given the fact that Keenan Allen's startup value is a lot later than Joe Mixon right now, maybe you can pull off a move that's like Keenan Allen and a 2023 first for Mixon and a second. If you could pull someone like that off, you still get the win now aspect of a Keenan Allen. You don't have actually any pick, so Joe Mixon and a second worthy player, maybe like a Ramondre Stevenson. So if you want to move Mixon and Stevenson and get yourself Keenan Allen in a first, that'd be a type of move I'd be looking to do. Obviously, you keep the win now nature of your team. Keenan Allen, we know, is going to be a steady contributor, and you're getting another piece in terms of draft capital to be able to at least liquidate this team in case anything were to happen. You have that fallback. So that would be the main move. I mean, Mixon, obviously, you're probably not going to get as much for Montgomery as Mixon, but if somebody's willing to overpay you for Montgomery, I'd listen open ears to any type of offers there. Aside from that, I mean, there's nothing else that really stands out to me. Maybe if somebody's willing to buy high on Dalton Schultz after what he did this year, they think he's going to be back in Dallas. You want to sell him for an early second. Somebody's willing to pay that. That'd be a type of move I'd look to offload, especially with Waller coming back. Overall, there's really quick fixes you can have here to downgrade quote unquote at positions while still replenishing some of your draft capital. And that's what I would be looking to do.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Dalton Schultz, because I think if you were to take Mixon and Dalton Schultz and go down to an Antonio Gibson, or maybe you can even get Gibson plus like Julio Jones or somebody that can help your wide receiver core that's older, that's not going to be worth a whole lot. I think that that could be a move. That
I would say Brandon Cooks.
If you pick up like a Jarvis Landry on top of Antonio Gibson and give up Mixon and Dalton Schultz, I would still be willing to move those two pieces to kind of downgrade quote unquote at running back in the short term, but get that age discrepancy that you're looking for.
It's funny because you literally have like the classic cheap producing type of wide receiver on your team with Brandon Cooks. Because I swear to God, anytime somebody tries to mention a dynasty buy low asset, Brandon Cooks is always the first name that's brought up, which, kind of goes to show that everybody used this quote unquote concussion bias against him because he had a couple concussions a couple years ago. I don't know. But either way, enough of Brandon Cooks. Overall, again, as Corey mentioned, Dalton Schultz and Mixon, if you want to go to, Gibson and a decent win now type of wide receiver, that'd be a good move.
Yep. Okay. So let's move on to Eteit's team. These are off the Patreon ones. Again, you can submit these just on Twitter, on Discord, however you want to submit them. It could be your full team. It could be just a question, could be just a trade that you made. Anything will do for Dynasty decisions. Brevity, of course, is appreciated because we get a lot of submissions. But Eteit's team, 12-team, half PPR, super flex, tight end premium. The team is on the screen right now. In a super flex, you got Lance, Stafford, Jordan Love, Swift, Dobbins, ETN, DJ Moore, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Ayuk, Higbee, and Komet. At tight end, draft picks, he got 107, 108, 201, 203. And then he has his own pick in 2023, or all of his own picks in 2023. And he also has an early to mid first and a mid to late first. So it sounds like he's got 2023 firsts to go along with a team that is well set up, in my opinion, both for the short term and for the long term. I think his biggest question basically is, should I push my chips to the middle? Should I go all out for 2022 and trade some of my 2023 firsts away while the value is really high for those guys, and basically try and win the championship this year? What are your thoughts looking at this team? Because I do think he could absolutely win the championship this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, looking at this team, the biggest clear weakness I'd say, or the two biggest weaknesses I'd say on this team are your starting tight end. I mean, I like Komet, so I'm not going to hold it too much against you because I do think Komet could end up being a tight end one this year. I mean, we saw the volume down the stretch with Fields, and would be quarterback 3 unless, of course, Rodgers is moved and Love ends up being your quarterback 3 for the long term. It's just tough to bet on a Jordan Love right now as a quarterback 3 type of production. Aside from that, I mean, wide receiver, you're loaded. Running back, you're loaded. I mean, Swift, Dobbins, ETN. It's almost like you just read our minds in these past couple of draft classes because those are some of our guys. I mean, I was a big Swift truther a couple of years ago, and Dobbins and ETN has basically been your 2 guys these past 2 years pretty much. So that's an FSC RB core if I were to say that, to say the least. And obviously with those wide receiver, or with those 2022 picks, the 107, the 108, the 201, and the 203, I would be looking to maybe see if you can move. Would you think about maybe Komet in those 2-1s to try to go after, like, I'm not going to say like an Andrews maybe?
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of potentially using those draft picks to try and go after a tight end. Even if you don't want to go after like Andrews or something, even if you secured like a Noah Fant to add to this tight end core, I think
And
that
the two,
probably puts you in a much better position. One of those picks to me is probably earmarked for quarterback 3. If you can get, Corral, Pickett, whoever gets first round draft capital,
yeah,
that's probably not Malik Willis because I highly doubt he'll fall to 107, 108. But if you can get one of those guys as your quarterback 3, then suddenly I feel a lot better about your quarterback situation long term because you have, Pickett or Corral, whatever, behind Lance and Stafford as your 2 starters. So I think I'm earmarking one of those picks for then. You also have, 3 picks next year that you could go after, like
yeah.
CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, or whatever. But I still think you're going to need a quarterback 3 in the short term, and you can win this year. So I don't mind just spending that pick on a quarterback this year. Or if you wanted to shop 107 or 108 or something for Zach Wilson and try and get him as your quarterback 3, because I think that's probably about what he's worth, 107,
Well,
108 in
I
terms of
mean,
rookie draft value.
yeah, like in worst case scenario, if somebody wanted, Love in the 108 or Love in the 201 or something to get Wilson, like you do that move instantly. Like
Yeah.
there's stuff like that. And again, like the good part about this team, the flexible part of this team is, guess what? If next year you're planning to win a championship, you're planning to compete, and maybe you start 3-5 or something like that, and you're at the deadline, at least you still have assets like Stafford and freaking Deontay Johnson that overall, no matter their age, I mean, I know Deontay's a little younger. He's like, what, 26? But like
Yeah.
Stafford, for example, is 33. Like if you wanted to say then, okay, I want to build this into a 2023 dominant team. I want to just acquire draft capital now and build around the class next year. Like you have the flexibility with this roster, with this overall arsenal picks that you have to be able to make a quick and easy transition if you need. So overall, again, those 107, 108, 201, 203, I would take it by ear. I'd listen to offers, but ultimately here, the main weaknesses on this team, quarterback 3, tight end. I look to try to make moves at the draft to be able to fill those spots if you're planning to compete.
Right. And I think the reverse is also true for what you said, right?
Yeah.
Because if you start off the season 6-1 with this team because Lance
Yeah.
comes out and he's like, this year's Jalen Hurts kind of thing, in terms of on-field production, you could flip the 108 for Travis Kelce midseason if you needed to, just to help fill out your team, or Darren Waller or something like that. If that team is looking to rebuild because they've started, 1-6 or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Because
I think, like
obviously,
Danny said, this is the classic. You set yourself up for flexibility. He also says, when he's looking, because he knows tight end is his biggest weakness. He said, I've tried to inquire about Pitts. I've tried to inquire about Hawkinson, Kelce, and Kittle owners don't want to sell. What other tight ends would you look to go after? I don't know if Andrews is the right move just because he's so high in value relative, because he was the
definitely
tight end
fair.
1 this year. Everybody's going to want to hold on to him. The guy that stands out to me is probably Waller, if you wanted to go for like more of a win now type of tight end. But I also like the idea of grabbing a tight end that's young right now,
Well,
like Noah Fant.
Well, if the Waller owner came to you and said, "Listen, if you want to give me the 107 Komet and maybe like if you have, I mean, you may not have another pick, but worst case scenario, let's say the 107 Komet and the 203. Would you do that?
I don't know if that's going to cost you that much to get Waller, to be honest. I feel like people are lower on Waller than that.
That's fair.
I think the 107 and Komet would be more than enough to probably get it done. Just like, again, it's probably all going to depend on what state that team is in. If they're a contending team, they probably don't want that package. But if they're looking to rebuild, then I think that's a package that could get it done.
I mean, like it should be decently close in value. Yeah, I mean, you should probably be able to pull off one of those late first and commit for Waller. But either way, all that's being said, I mean, you clearly know that tight end's like your biggest need, and I'm assuming you also know quarterback 3. Anything else you see here, or should we move on?
No, and I think even the 201 and 203 could be earmarked for a tight end in this draft class if McBride or Weidermeyer get good.
That's fair.
Get good draft capital. It's a tight end premium. They'll probably be worth that 201, 203 type of spot if they go top 50 in the NFL draft or something. So let's move on to DJ Platinum's team.
Yep.
DJ Platinum sent us a very organized version of his team, which we always appreciate. 12 team, half PPR, super flex tight end premium. Again, a lot of teams building cornerstone quarterback cores around the 2021 quarterback class, Justin Fields and Trey Lance. You got Kyle Pitts at tight end, obviously, which is definitely, you love to see that in a tight end premium. Running backs, nobody to speak of. Wide receivers, very little to speak of as well. But look at that draft capital. That's got to make you salivate, right? You got the cornerstone players on your team are Kyle Pitts, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. And then you got like Cole Kmet and some other pieces that could be worth something. But your assets are the 102, the 105, the 106, the 107, the 109, the 111, 203, 206, 7 2023 first rounders. You are looking to start your competing window after the 2023 draft into the 2023 season. Once you've spent most of those picks, maybe you've traded some of them. He basically says, I gutted my team last year, got some core pieces and a shit ton of first. That is an understatement. So I would be really curious to see who are the holds, who are the sleepers, and what you guys think going forward with the current makeup of his team, pick targets and trades that he should be trying to make.
I just wanted to say, like, am I in heaven? Like, this is like, if I were to pick a way to like start a dynasty team, like this would be the way. Like, you have your young, talented fucking liquid assets with your Fields, your Lance, your Pitts. And I mean, Ramondre for the rookie, 406 last year. I mean, if that's what that means, like, kudos. Like, you basically got, a mid-second round worth running back in the 4th round. So, I mean, that's a decent running back to have.
You also got Kyle Pitts in a tight end premium, not at the 101 or 102, which is where I think he should have been going last year.
Well, like, basically, so I'm assuming the 101 and the 103, somebody probably took
Lawrence 101 and
Lawrence and probably
or Najee 103.
Yeah. So, I mean, kudos to that. Like, this is a perfect team, and this makes me salivate. You have your core pieces, and the greatest part about building a team like this, and this is why we at FSE always say, like, when you're at your startup, especially if you're with more casual redraft type of players, you can build a dominant team by year 3 if you just invest into players that won't lose value. Like, generally speaking, you have 7 firsts next year, and what is that, 6 firsts this year alone. I'm not even counting the seconds because you have 4 in the next 2 years as well. By the time you're ready to compete in 2023, guess what? These teams that you would have competed with, you have all their picks. And all those assets that they're competing with right now, guess what? Are going to be worth jack all by 2023 when you're competing. And you took away their way to replenish them. So, I mean, ultimately here, like, you could go into 2023 and realistically have no competition to win the championship. Like, I genuinely think that could be the case. Like, obviously you have Pitts, you have Fields, you have Lance, and Ramondre your main pieces right now. Say in the next, 2 drafts, you have 13 first rounders, and you end up, getting an assortment of like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Keyshawn Boutte, Treylon Burks, Drake London, mixing a couple running backs in there, whether it's Bijan and Gibbs or whatever. Like, this is a team that by that time, you're going to look at and say, well, how did I just acquire?
You could own half the first 3 rounds of the startup by that
genuinely
time. Yeah.
Like, genuinely. So overall, I mean, you clearly have a good head on your shoulders because this is great asset accumulation here. And not going to lie, I'm pretty fucking jealous.
Yeah. In terms of like sleepers, I think Cole Kmet is a guy that I'm definitely holding on to. I think he's going to, accumulate in value. I talked about KJ Osborne as a good buy low. As well, I think he's a guy to hold on to. De'Ami Brown, in the position you're at, you might as well just hold him at this point. I still believe in the prospect that I saw at North Carolina. Same with, Amir Smith-Marset, Jalen Darden. I think those guys are good holds. Aside from those guys, there's nobody that I'm, married to outside of your core pieces and the guys I just mentioned.
Yeah, like, Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day here on this type of construction, roster construction, you don't need to have any real sleepers because guess what? Those sleepers are going to come from those second round picks that you have in these next 2 years, and that those two third round picks you also have. So overall, I mean, your sleepers are going to start showing themselves within the next 2 years once you actually have sleeper players that you picked in the draft.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, just stay the course. I think you're in a great spot here. Continue doing what you're doing, and you clearly have a good head on your shoulders, as Danny mentioned. So
Yeah.
before we get into Mike Bake's team, got to pay some bills around here. Got to hear a word from our sponsors over at Manscaped.
Hey lads, today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at Manscaped, the leaders in male grooming across the globe. With Valentine's Day just around the corner, our sponsors at Manscaped are here with the best tools to get you ready for the special occasion. At the end of the day, the amount of roses and chocolates you bring won't matter if your manly parts are not kept up. Manscaped provides men with the cleanest and most concise trimming experience available on the market. The holidays went by so quickly. Did you shore up your grooming routine with the best tools for the job? The Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped is just the thing every guy needs in their life to make each and every day just a little more special. The number one product in this package is the Lawnmower 4.0. This electric trimmer is designed to trim hair on loose skin, and get this, the trimmer's advanced skin-safe technology reduces cuts and nicks on your body. It even has a 4000K LED spotlight so you can shave in the dark. Also, did I mention? This thing is waterproof too, baby. You want to do it in the shower, you want to do it, after you wash up. All the power to you. This trimmer is the best on the market, the Lawnmower 4.0. Make sure your grooming experience is not without this elite trimmer. In addition to this trimmer, in addition to the Lawnmower 4.0, this package also includes the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer to whack all the worst of your weeds. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. This nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology which helps prevent against said nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes of yours. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts, their Shed Travel Bag and Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs to keep you comfy everywhere you go. To get this package and more, go to manscaped.com for our exclusive offer over here at the Fancy Stock Exchange of 20% off plus free shipping if you use promo code BUSH at checkout. This Valentine's Day, it's time to join 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer as I mentioned. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. Your lady will thank you for getting the best male grooming experience currently on the market. And if you didn't hear me right, 20% off, free shipping, promo code BUSH. All sums up to the best experience you can have in dealing with those delicates of yours. That's 20% off plus free shipping with promo code BUSH at checkout. Join Cupid and shoot your arrow with Manscaped this Valentine's Day. Again, we appreciate the support for the Fantasy Stock Exchange shown by our friends over at Manscaped and thank them for sponsoring today's video. Back to the video.
All right. So on to Mike Bake's team. He has, his team listed here, a number of trades, potential trades that he's looking to do. I'll let you talk about his team.
Yeah, so you guys can see the team on the screen here. This is a 1 quarterback, 10 team full PPR league. He finished 9th in the 2021 regular season. As you see, he does have the 102, but team as a whole, Fields, Watson, Tua as the main quarterbacks, Jonathan Taylor, Jacobs, Ramondre, and although I like Ronald Jones's landing spot, I think most would consider him fodder at this point, even though I do think he could be worth a decent chunk more. Yeah, and the wide receivers here, I mean, we both love our young ascending wide receiver talents. You obviously have Higgins a little bit higher than Lamb. I have Lamb a little bit higher than Higgins. But guess what? It doesn't matter when you have both of them on the same team. So love to see that. Claypool, obviously there's a big hype around Gabe Davis right now. Odell Beckham kind of showed the haters that he is indeed a talented wide receiver. It was just that dynamic between him and Baker that stepped in the way. And then at tight end, I mean, you got the godsend himself and Kyle Pitts. So overall here, you definitely have a good assortment of talent on this team, and you have plenty of draft capital to be able to add to it. So overall, he has a couple potential trades as well listed here. What are your thoughts on the team? What are your thoughts on the assets? And what are your thoughts on him potentially making some of these moves?
So you got a very, very tempting scenario in front of you. I will say this because looking at your team, it's pretty clear to me that you could use another stud running back if you wanted to compete, right? You're going to be very tempted to take Breece Hall or Isaiah Spiller 102. Don't do it. They're not worth that pick. The wide receiver talent is better in this upcoming draft. You guys have been watching these tail of the tapes the last couple of weeks. You know that I have higher grades on Drake London and Treylon Burks and Garrett Wilson than Spiller, Hall, Walker, some of the highest, rated running backs in this class. It's going to be very tempting for you not to take Breece Hall or Isaiah Spiller with that 102. I'm telling you, the wide receiver talent is better in this class. You're going to be better off in the long term for taking Drake London or taking, Treylon Burks with that 102, or maybe a quarterback as well. But it is a one quarterback league, so you're probably not looking in that direction. So again, stay the course with that 102. If you want to sell it for a running back, sell it for a current running back. Don't draft a running back with that pick. If you want to sell that 102 for Gibson, J.K. Dobbins, somebody like that, I would rather do that than draft Spiller or Hall.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. We're both on the same page there. However, though, I mean, with this first deal, give Gabe Davis and the 202 for the 104. Listen, I think Gabe Davis is a fun player, but give me the sure asset that you're getting at 104. Again, I personally, if I have a gun to my head right now,
I would rather take a running back. At 104, I'm rather taking, Spiller, Hall, whatever running back you
over
prefer.
Gabe Davis.
That would be the way I would replenish my RB2 and my RB3.
Yeah, I mean, like, do the deal. And hey, if you don't get a running back at 104, guess what? That would basically mean that you got a locked and loaded one at 102. Or sorry, not running back, but like say you traded for Gibson at the 102 and then, Drake London ended up falling to you at the 104, or Treylon Burks or Garrett Wilson. Like, for a fact that most home casual leagues, that as much as we preach wide receivers, and as much as we preach, well, not wide receivers, but best player available overall, running backs are going to get pushed off the board because, as we know, in the fantasy industry, everybody likes touting running back scarcity, instead of taking best player available. So I feel like in most leagues, for the most part, that 101 and the 103, the picks that you don't control, are probably going to be some combination of Hall and Spiller. And if that's the case, and you basically flipped Davis in the 202 for what ended up being, Drake London, like, that's a dub. That's easy.
Yeah, even if that's Garrett Wilson or Isaiah Spiller, I still think that's a phenomenal trade to make. So yeah, I would definitely make that first trade. I think Gabe Davis is a fun, young wide receiver that is clearly worth some value right now, probably in the realm of the 112, 203, like somewhere in that range of value is where I would value Gabe Davis.
Right after
that 104 in this class. This class is quite top heavy, especially with those top wide receivers and Isaiah Spiller for me. So that 104 is guaranteed to be in a one quarterback league. Either Drake London, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, or Isaiah Spiller. I'm gladly making this trade because I think that's a tier break after those guys.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Ramondre with this second deal as well. Like, I don't mind Ramondre. I don't mind the 204. But with this type of team, you get Keenan Allen added to this team. You mentioned that if ball breaks right, if Deshaun Watson's on an NFL roster, if Jonathan Taylor ends up being what he was last year, if CeeDee Lamb and T. Higgins pick up where they were as second-year, 22-year-old wide receivers this past year, like, this is an easily competitive team with the assets you have this year, with the talent that you have this year. Getting a guy in Keenan Allen who, if he plays a full 17-game schedule, like, we're basically earmarking for at least fringe top 12 type of production. I think he's got a case to be fringe top 6 to 8 this upcoming year with Justin Herbert. So if you're able to get that, I understand old wide receiver, everybody hates him. But at the end of the day here, you're getting him as your wide receiver 3-4 on this team, building out through the draft, as we mentioned, with, a London, Burks, Wilson type, and maybe potentially moving the 102 for a Gibson. Like, this is a team that could easily win the championship next year.
Yeah, right. If you make all these trades and you have all these picks, you go at 102, you take Drake London or Treylon Burks. At 104, you take, Isaiah Spiller, and then, you get Keenan Allen, and then suddenly this team is, looking complete and ready to compete, like I mentioned. So yeah, I think you're in a great spot. It's a 10-team league, so obviously his team's going to look a little bit better than a standard 12-team league, but even in a 10-teamer, I think you're in a great spot going forward. I think you did a great job building this thing. Mike Bake's. So moving off of Mike Bake's team, let's talk about Brock's team now, and we'll try and speed this up a little bit. But Brock has his team listed here, and I'll let you go over that.
Yeah, for sure. So description he left here, you guys can read it, but I'll just kind of outline it for you. Recently had a Dynasty startup. First one he's been in with more sharp players, and he basically wanted us to kind of look at his draft and see what type of improving points he should do and what he should look to do with this team. So overall, you guys see the team, Kyler Lamar, a quarterback, which is just phenomenal way to start. In a super flex. Yeah, I had to double check that this is a super flex because those are both legitimate top 7 overall startup type picks. So you're set there with those two. Running back, obviously Cam Akers, AJ Dillon, Ronald Jones is the main guys there. Wide receiver, Godwin, Hollywood, etc. And then at tight end, you have Hawkinson. In terms of picks, like, considering that you have Kyler and Lamar and you still have draft capital, is pretty phenomenal. So I'll let you take it away. Look at what exactly he has here, and what are your initial thoughts when looking at both this roster and collection of liquid assets he has built up here?
Yeah, this is one of those rosters where you build up the superstar talent, right? Like you clearly don't have, a ton of depth, I would say, like outside of, your top two at running back and wide receiver. There's not anybody that stands out as like screaming, accumulators and value or anything like that. But having the 104 definitely helps. You like he says here, he's hoping for one of the big three wide receivers. That definitely makes a lot of sense. If you can get, Garrett Wilson or Drake London to fall to 104, that rounds out your wide receiver core a little bit more. And then at the 202, he said he's hoping for, Bell, Olave, Pickens, Robinson, Williams, any of those, tertiary second tier wide receivers makes a lot of sense. And then he says maybe a quarterback for these three picks as well. Yeah, if you can get a quarterback there as well, that definitely helps out. And then you have 2 firsts next year. I think you're set up to start competing in 2023. Obviously, you're going to need to hit on those picks for that to happen. And some of your younger pieces. The one thing I will say is that I wish you had like one more wide receiver that was like a cornerstone guy with this team construction. So if you had Godwin, Hollywood Brown, and a Monra or something like that, that would be a little bit better of a situation. But you're going to be able to replenish that talent in the draft. I would continue to look to acquire pieces. But like Danny said, you have your cornerstone down in a tight end premium with TJ Hawkinson, with the 2 stud quarterbacks, 2 of our top 5-6 dynasty quarterbacks, and then Akers, Godwin, Hollywood Brown, AJ Dillon are good pieces as well. So overall, I think you did a good job. It is a 10-teamer, so I think the team should be a bit better. But other than that, I think you're in a pretty decent spot.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree here. Obviously, with those picks, he outlines that with a 104, if any of the big three wide receivers falls, I'm sure myself and you do agree that the 3 receivers are the best players available. And hey, I mean, if the 3 receivers go 101 to 103 and, Malik Willis gets top 15 capital, I don't think you'd be opposed to that idea either.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and I highly, highly doubt that if a quarterback gets drafted in the top 10, they're going to go after all 3 of those wide receivers in dynasty
I
drafts.
agree.
I actually bet money that they go
Yeah.
101.
I would think the most likely scenario for you, if again Malik Willis gets top 10 draft capital, is a Garrett Wilson probably falls to you, because again you got basically Dynasty Twitter as a whole talking about Treylon Burks. I think everybody kind of knows the cat's out of the bag there, and a lot of more analytically driven circles are going to also say, I mean, you as well agree that Drake London is the wide receiver 1 in this class too. I mean, his analytical profile is probably one of the best we've seen in years.
Yeah, it's the best one I've seen.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I mean, you're in a really good spot there. 202. You mentioned those wide receivers. Yeah, I would simply look at the wide receivers: Williams, Olave, Bell, Pickens. Pick your flavor there. And again, if like a Corral ended up falling, you have 3 picks in a row there.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely do not disagree there. We can move on to Wesley Fox's team. I think Brock's got again, he's a loyal follower of the channel. I think he knows what he's doing going forward. So Wesley Fox has his team listed here: Mahomes and Tua, Swift, Mixon, Saquon, Chase, DJ Moore, Coop. I'm assuming that's Amari Cooper. Michael Thomas, Galladay, Pitts at tight end, and then a number of second round picks, the 110. It's a 10-team, 1 quarterback league. And he has 3, 2023 firsts as well. So looking at this team, I think we can probably both agree he's well set up. He's got a number of cornerstone assets. Again, we're going to sound like a broken record here, but Joe Mixon, I mean, see what you can get for him, right?
Yeah. You could probably end up like, this is going to sound crazy in some circles, but if you have a league that is lower on McCaffrey, do you think 110 and Mixon gets it done for McCaffrey?
Maybe. Yeah. I think, and again, I don't want to force a Mixon trade, because I do think you're in a position that you can clearly win the championship this year. It looks like you came in 3rd, I'm guessing, with that 110 this year. So you could definitely just run it back with this team. No problems. Replenish some talent in the draft and, be on your merry way. Michael Thomas coming back will obviously help you out this year. And Amari Cooper hopefully can get back to his, shape, and DJ Moore, had 160 targets. It was the quietest 160 targets.
163 targets this year.
Yeah. The quietest 160 target season I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, this team is clearly ready to compete. You could move off of Joe Mixon to get either younger or better in the short term with a guy like Christian McCaffrey. That's kind of my only thoughts on the team. Overall, I don't think there's a whole lot I would change about this, though, because like you have Patrick Mahomes, you have, all these pieces that are very, very high value options.
Yep, for sure. I mean,
can you see a better 4 stack across the board as your QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1, and tight end 1? Like you can't get much better than that. Like Jonathan Taylor is the only way you get better than that.
Yeah. No, literally, like Taylor's the only way you get better than that. I mean,
maybe Josh Allen if you prefer him to Mahomes.
Yeah, like you're in a really good spot there. I'm not even gonna lie. I think we can even move off because I mean the fact that you have that win now team and then also 3 picks next year, like great job because this is a prime asset accumulation to say the least.
Yep. So we'll move on to StarGazin's team. He listed here. It's basically he gave me 2 teams, but I asked him which one do you want us to review. So he said review this one. It's more of a it's his main league, and he finished in last, so he can't have that happen again. I'm kind of surprised you finished in last place with this team. I guess you had a number of injuries that were kind of
Yeah.
unfortunate, but it's a 12 team PPR Superflex tight end premium. And in a tight end premium, obviously you don't have the cornerstone tight end. But outside of that, your team is in very good shape. You have McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor as your top 2 running backs. You have Hill, Elijah Moore, Ayuk, Bateman, even some half decent depth at the wide receiver position as well. Same goes for your running backs with CEH and Stevenson as your RB3 and 4. I don't think that's terrible. And then at quarterback, you have Burrow and Lance as your top 2 guys. Not a great quarterback 3, but you have the 104 and 105 this year, 203 and 204 this year. Overall, looking at this team, is there anything that immediately stands out to you as a move that you would make, or are you just kind of looking to replenish in the draft and try and run it back and compete this year?
Looking at this team, I mean, clearly, like you're in a win now mode with McCaffrey, Taylor, Hill, Moore, Ayuk, etc. I mean, this is a really good team. I have no clue how you finished with the worst record in 2021, but it's not going to happen again. Like people like saying, "Oh, injury prone, McCaffrey, yada yada yada." Like injury is just a factor of variance. I think we kind of know that, especially at the running back position. We all know they're pretty much all injury prone. So the fact that you got unlucky with your top asset getting hurt shouldn't happen on a year-to-year basis. But either way, I mean, you're taking this already stacked team. You're adding the 104, the 105, the 203, and the 204. Like you could build this into dominance this year. Like you can go from the worst record in your league to straight up the best record in your league within a year.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree. I think that 104 and 105, maybe you go after a quarterback with that pick as your quarterback 3. Maybe you just go after, best player available. If it's Garrett Wilson, if it's, Drake London that falls to that point, I think you're in, great position to, just replenish this thing in the draft and go on along your merry way. If you want to maybe shop and see what you can get a tight end for, but it is a tight end premium. It's probably going to cost you a lot to go after, a Hawkinson and Andrews, a Pitts, whatever tight end that you're looking to get a major upgrade from. I think you have enough young talent between Smith and Komet to kind of see what happens. Maybe you want to shop one of your picks for a veteran tight end and see if you can kind of replenish production that way. But I think inquiring about maybe even Pat Fryermuth would make some sense with this team.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, overall, the only real weakness is at that tight end spot. Aside from that, I mean, Jimmy G should be a serviceable quarterback 3 for you. Obviously, we don't know what the status of Carson Wentz is going to be, but he's probably going to end up
I'd be
being a
willing to
starter
bet one
somewhere.
of those 2 guys is a starting quarterback next year,
Yeah,
whether it's Jimmy G or Carson Wentz. I'd be surprised if neither of them are starting
I,
quarterbacks.
th- I think both might be. And if
Yeah,
that's the
like
case, like
I've heard rumors that, the Steelers might be in on Carson Wentz. I've heard rumors that, Washington and Tampa Bay is like the betting favorite to get Jimmy G. Like we don't really know what's going to happen right now with those 2 guys, but I think you got a QB3 at least for next year between those 2 guys.
for sure. And in terms of your draft capital here, again, just BPA, you're probably going to end up adding more wide receivers, especially if you're in a more RB believer type of league. Like imagine you go at the 104, 105 and you secure 2 of the top 3 freaking receivers in this class. Like
Yeah,
you're
you
loving
might
it.
you might get London and Wilson with those picks.
For sure. So overall, I mean, good state here. You clearly know what you're doing. We can move on to the final question of the video. We're gonna get another team, but we're just waiting on more information on it. We put it in this last second question, and it's going to be from Lumber. And the reason why I included this question is there's a very polarizing player in this deal that in general, I feel like the community doesn't necessarily know how to value, and that's going to be Rashad Penny because clearly the upside of a Rashad Penny is what we saw this year, closing out the year. If you're a redraft player, you obviously know that this guy was a legitimate top half RB1 down the stretch.
The reason that trophy ain't going anywhere behind me is because of Rashad Penny.
Yeah,
Legitimately, I had DeAndre Swift on my team who didn't play until week 6 or the final week, the championship week of the playoffs, and he did nothing in that game because Dan Campbell lied to us. And Rashad Penny was the reason I still won because he was in my flex spot carrying my team during that game. And the thing with Penny that I think is interesting is that you have both sides of the spectrum seem very loud on him. He's either the biggest sell candidate in dynasty history, or he's, somehow a top 10 talent at the running back position. If he could only stay healthy, he'll be the best running back in fantasy. Like I seriously feel like it's that divided.
Yeah, and it's funny because with a player like Penny, his current keep trade cut value is as RB 34 206. But I bet you in more casual leagues, he's probably closer to what, the 202 201 in value in some casual leagues. And if that's the case, I mean, I feel like personally,
And
where I
for
stand
those
on
of you
that,
that don't follow the draft this year, I do think that's a big difference. The
yeah,
201, 202 type of wide receiver prospect, David Bell, George Pickens type that you're going to get at that 201, 202, maybe Tyler Algier if he gets good draft capital, is a bigger difference to me than the 206 where you're
Tyron
looking at like a
Williams.
Christian Watson, Sky Moore type of prospect. I think that's probably the the dichotomy between those values. So if you think, oh, 201 and 205, that's not that big of a difference, it is, in my opinion, this year.
Yeah, and either way, like where we land kind of on the Penny evaluation, I'm going to quickly go over is, well, I know for me personally, I'm looking at a 26-year-old going on 27-year-old running back that hasn't been able to stay healthy. I don't like throwing around the term injury prone, but he hasn't had a season of sustained production. Did he have a good 6-game stretch this year, 7-game stretch this year? Absolutely, but that's not the type of profile I'd like to bet on. So again, like if I can get anywhere close to early second round value for him personally, I would take that straight up. In terms of this package, this is a phenomenal move to me. I'll let you kind of look at it as well. But Godwin and Bateman, he got in exchange for Diggs and Penny. I would
In a
make the
rebuild too. The
yeah,
rebuilding factor is the key, the key argument there, because with Diggs and Godwin, you save a couple of years of age there, which is important, right? In a
same tier.
rebuild. Godwin's still a bit younger than Stephon Diggs, and Bateman to me is a great rebuilding, piece to go acquire right now, because we don't really know, what he's going to become in the NFL. We have rumors that, his teammate Hollywood Brown might start becoming a pro gamer, and suddenly that provides a selling window for you. If you own Rashad Bateman, even if you don't believe in him, you could sell him high at that point. So that's always something that you should be wary of as well, is my young pieces. Is there going to be any selling windows coming up? Because that provides you some flexibility and it'll increase the value of those players. So to me, the way I break this down is Godwin and Diggs, it's more or less a wash to me, just because Diggs, yes, he's going to be more valuable right now, but Godwin is more valuable long-term. And in a big rebuild, I prefer Godwin to Diggs long-term in that situation. And the difference between Bateman and Penny, even if you
Night and
prefer
day.
Diggs, is big enough to the point that I would take the Godwin side still.
Well, like worst case scenario, if you prefer Diggs to Godwin, let's say Diggs is worth what, Godwin in a mid to late second, give or take. Let's just say like that. That's like you're high on Diggs or you're low on Godwin. At that point, we're comparing Bateman versus Penny in a mid to late second. Like, give me Bateman all day. First round draft capital wide receiver, young ascending offense, superstar quarterback. And yeah, like although I do prefer Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews in that room, this Fugazi little too much to pass around, or too many mouths to feed, whatever people want to call it, is a Fugazi. Because at the end of the day here, if you're a good enough
That
player,
narrative only applies to bad offenses. That narrative doesn't, like, that applies to the Denver Broncos this year, where we have Judy and Sutton and Fant and, the running
Drew
backs,
Lock,
where there's too many mouths to feed because Teddy Bridgewater's the quarterback.
yeah,
But that narrative doesn't apply when Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson,
Dak
Kyler
Prescott.
Murray, Joe Burrow, these guys are the quarterbacks of these teams. Like, they're obviously going to produce high fantasy numbers when you have Marquise Brown, is a young ascending wide receiver, just had a breakout season. Rashad Bateman, who we believe in long term. Mark Andrews, who's like the best young tight end in the league, maybe outside of Kyle Pitts right now. And J.K. Dobbins, who I think is a superstar waiting to happen next year. Then you're going to have a great offense that potentially leads the NFL in scoring. And no player in fantasy has ever disappointed as a part of the league's best scoring offense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I fully agree here. But yeah, I mean, that was a fun little debate to have, because, again, a lot of people might look at that question and completely disagree with us. They think Diggs is the best asset in the deal. They think Penny's got young upside at the running back position. But that's the fun of Dynasty Fantasy Football. Sticking to your process, evaluating the market, and evaluating ultimately where you lie in terms of a player's value on the market. So I thought I'd include that question. It was fun. And again, as always, if you guys are interested in potentially joining a league with us, hit that Patreon down below, baby. We're going to be starting up a new Dynasty startup as soon as possible, probably right before free agency, right around the draft time. Who knows? We'll
Yeah,
figure it
we
out.
don't know if we're going to do it either before the draft or after the draft, but either way, the easiest way to become a part of that league is to be a Patreon, because that will be how you get into the league. And the Tone Setters tier, which is the higher price tier, will guarantee that you're in that league as well.
Yep, for sure. So make sure you go become a tone setter or a member of the Patreon as well. Because again, we want to include as many people as possible on these Dynasty Decisions video. Make sure your team gets included in future episodes. But yeah, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. Anything else you want to add, or should we take it away?
No, again, if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, check out the Tail of the Tape videos. If you guys are curious, if we named a prospect that you've never heard of and you want to learn more about them, I'm sure they're listed in the Tail of the Tape videos. And if they don't have a video yet, they will be coming very, very soon as well. Peace out, guys. Talk to you soon.